Oh, brother.
What's redemption?
Trying to get his gang in.
So it's those that make that awful noise. I've heard these outside at the house when I first moved to Florida, because I was originally from Pennsylvania, and there are sounds of things down here that you never hear up north. And this was one of them. It took me weeks to try to figure out what was that. I couldn't even place what animal it might be. Was it a bird? Was it some kind of weird reptile? Because there's weird reptile and insect noises down here. You know, was it a frog? There's some bullfrogs that sound close to that. This is the first time I've seen what the thing was that makes that noise. And it's strange because we had, about 2 weeks ago, we had some really strange things happening where these fleets of black birds would descend on the lawn. It was like a movie, like a scene out of the movie Birds or something. And it was really strange. It was only these black things, these big black crow-like things. And it was almost like it had an omen feeling to it, and it wasn't a pleasant one. I didn't know what it was about, but I was thinking, oh, yuck, there they are again. And I like birds, but there was something about the energy that they were about and that they were bringing. And they didn't make this noise. They didn't make any noise. You could hardly even hear them. They just descended like 100 of them on the lawn and decided our lawn was where they were going to eat. You know, and there's nothing there that's not on the neighbors. So twice they've come. I think it's a spy. Yeah.
Like the energy, though.
It depends on who it is. Okay, I mean, some birds are out of pure strain matrices. Other birds have been planted here from races from phantom. So this goes with plants and everything else too.
Check it out. Anna, there's a lot of these all over New York now.
Are there?
Yeah.
All right.
It used to be way out in Long Island, but now they're all around Brooklyn.
All around Brooklyn, yeah. I get a funny feeling from these guys. I mean, I like all animals and plants and things, and I don't, judge them, but as far as what matrix they're coming from and what energies they're carrying, I don't get a real positive feeling on these big black guys. Yeah.
I don't want us talking about them.
Yeah, I think he just found out what he needed to know. Yes, they do know we're spies. No. See, there was old Native American and other types of tribal people knew that they could project their consciousness into animal forms, and they could temporarily possess the animal body and direct it where they wanted to. And that was the feeling I got with these beings on the lawn. I just had a feeling that who borrowed the birds, Like, I didn't think the birds thought it was a good idea to go there themselves. It was almost like trying to do something to the grids at the house by having a whole bunch of this frequency come and land on the lawn at the same time and hang out there. They hung out there for about half an hour. So that was just like a little thing. Oh, here, another one of them's back again. There's a lot of things that there's a lot more to them than meets the eye, but it's also important to not go off on total paranoid tangents where you start to see things and things that aren't there. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I'm learning to acknowledge it. I used to be in a denial space with it, where, psychotronics, for instance. There's other people out there talking about psychotronics, and I've had a lot of times in my life where I was, they attempted to use them on me to try to shut me up and shut my DNA down so I couldn't, pull any more stuff. But it would be the last thing that I would look for as the reason why, I was having a bad day or I was getting sick or something was happening to me. I've learned to balance that now where I'm not anti-looking at what the negative solution might be, but I was so wanting to not get caught up in the trap of seeing the negative in everything where, you take innocent things that have really no negative thing coming at you and you start to get paranoid where you think everything's coming at you. So it's just a balancing thing, but I definitely think they're visitors, they're observing us. I wouldn't doubt it if they have something to do. There's an interesting feel. They're talking to each other now. There's another one. Yeah, they sent another one over. I get a strange feeling that there's a connection with these guys, with the black crow things, that has to do with, oddly enough, Montauk, New York. I know there have been experiments that went on from Montauk where they were combining remote viewing technologies and teaching people to project out of body and to be able to not only go and observe things, but to be able to go and mess with people's astral fields, because they were teaching them how to see the astral bodies of people and how to literally, do psychic attack on them. And I wouldn't doubt if they've been playing with animal as well, as being able to put yourself into animals, because animals could be used for weapons. You could literally, if you could possess an animal, you could cause harm very targeted. You could find the dog of a person, that person's with the dog all the time, and you could, if you were, trying to harm someone, you could actually put your consciousness into that dog and temporarily have it attack. And these are some of the things that the shamans of old used to know that they could do. And now since they've been bringing undercover people involved with Montauk, people involved with the Philadelphia experiment, people involved primarily with the Zeta agendas, I think have been studying these remote how to mess with people tactics. So I get a feeling that the crows are kind of like the satellites of, it's definitely one of the Zeta group that's involved with this, that's connected to the whole Montauk area. There's even some people that can feel it. Yeah, this is just spontaneous coming through. We weren't supposed to talk about crows. So anyway, we'll get off the subject of crows. But I was just getting that. I do think there's something to the crow thing. So it's something you might want to observe in your life, be aware of, just in case. Hmm?
Can we treat them with symbolic energy? Either get rid of that on them or have them leave?
They'll respond more because there's some birds, especially, and I felt this with these guys too, they're very desensitized to certain types of subtle frequency. We'd have to like really blast them and throw Maharic balls at them to get them to pay attention there's actually something moving toward them. It would be literally out of their range, and they wouldn't feel direct Maharic frequency. Now, they can't do anything to us because we already have the Maharic frequency, and so they're not going to hurt us. But what they will respond to is when we get up and start, like when we do the exercise and we're toning. Now, they'll respond to the vibrations of the three-dimensional translation of those tones as it's coming out. It'll create a sound wave field that it'll probably agitate them, and they'll probably go, I would think. It would be interesting to watch how they react to that. You can try that with other animals if you're ever out. This is something I guess is supposed to be part of the conversation this morning, is to be aware that there are interesting things taking place that you might not realize are there. Like if you start to see certain types of animal forms or certain things that just seem, gee, there's another one of those that keeps appearing in my hologram, right, whatever it might be. For a long time I had moths chasing me, and I still have this closet where these moths, no matter what we do to them, they won't go away, right? Now, it took me a long time to figure out that the moths are associated with the draconian dragon moths, all right? They're little, some of them, not all of them. Some moths are nice. And there used to be one white moth that would appear at all sorts of different times in my life, and like for years. Now, moths don't live that long, but this same moth with a big, fat, hairy white body and these beautiful white wings, it was a big one, would appear in the weirdest places. In the middle of winter, it would be on the outside of my window while I was doing dishes in the kitchen. Moths aren't outside up north in the middle of winter when there's snow and ice, you know? This one was like a protection one. Somebody sent it, so this one wasn't from the draconian matrix, but other types of them are, and you can trace the signature back. Be aware of it, and just kind of in an amused sort of way, and check out what's around you. You know, sometimes if you're noticing animal life or insect life, insects are a big one. Most of the insects, like when you go to Tara, where the grids are straightened out better than they are here, they don't have that type of insect life. They don't have things that bite and things that sting like that. These were put here, you know? And they might like take care of each other and have become part of what's the unnatural food chain here, but they're parts of the consciousness. They're manifestations of the fandom matrix life forms. They put them here to hold frequency. They've also put them here so they have weapons when necessary. You know, a great way to get rid of somebody, if there's a shaman out in the jungle that's doing too much good work and it's messing up your grids and you're trying to do something bad, well, if you have some snakes hanging out there that you can tap right into their fields, you just go send one of your anacondas over there and take care of that shaman. You know what I mean? So there's weird stuff going on. It's been going on all along. In the ancient days, we remembered, we knew consciously that this wasn't weird stuff. This was some of the realities that can be a part of using your consciousness and knowing how to project it and how to move it. But it's good to get in touch with the fact that those old arts haven't died off. There's just certain collectives that have held that knowledge and have used it, and some of them are not using it for positive. There are others that are using it for positive, but you won't find them possessing animals, because it's a spiritual violation to force your consciousness into an animal body and make that animal do something. That would be just like somebody forcing themselves into your body and making you do something. You can communicate with the animals. You can ask a bird, for instance. I did this once. I asked a bird if, you know, telepathically, I telepathed to it. It was a blue jay. I telepathed to it, could it help me to understand what it felt like to be a bird? Could I move my consciousness at least near it? Or even like around it, but in a way that wouldn't harm it. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know if you're allowed to do that at all. I was kind of like, okay, bird, you know, we can teach each other things. You want to feel what it feels like to be a human? You know? You can try on my energy and I'll try on yours. And I got this really strange, the bird understood me. I just felt this direct cognition coming. And made like an energy line where I knew I was supposed to follow that with a part of my consciousness. And I kind of spread out in the like etheric body field of the bird, and that wasn't violating it. It allowed me to be there. And the most amazing perceptions came to me. I found out what it felt like to be bird. I could feel this communication taking place. I could feel the bird feet as if I was the bird. And I could feel that the bird has a constant communication with the tree consciousness when it lands on a branch. They communicate with each other. It's like we'd say, oh, hi, George, you're back again. Yeah, hello, how are you doing today? I mean, they communicate with each other very, very consciously. The birds can feel through their feet the pulse of the tree. Trees have a heartbeat. They have a pulse, and it's like the blood flowing through human veins. They have their own pulse, and they have their own very large awareness. I was able to feel all of this thing through the bird. The bird let me know. It gave me permission to experience an expanded state of consciousness by experiencing what it's like to experience bird. And it had a type of consciousness of its own where it was, in certain ways, more mature than what we call human consciousness, because it didn't have the same ability to get tied up in emotional issues, you know, like to get dragged around by the emotional body. There was just a very astute and crisp awareness of being focused in the moment and feeling the natural energy flow, the instincts flow. It knew where it would go to eat. It knew what it would do. It didn't have to think thoughts in linear terms, but it perceived huge amounts of things. This little tiny bird up in the tree was fully aware, and this was like I was on a second-floor apartment and I was out on my porch. There was a yard down below that had this family of cats in the yard down below, and the bird and the cats weren't paying any attention to each other, but when I was in the bird, I was fully aware that that bird was aware of about a 5-block radius of every cat and dog and thing that could eat it. It was just very aware of it, not afraid of it. It just like registered it like radar. It would just have these little, okay, over there, and it knew how to direct its thought. It's like its flight path, where to go to avoid the obstacles that were in its way. There's a huge awareness. You can try some of these things sometimes. Put your, Maharic seal up. Try to begin to communicate with the other things that are there. This is part of what the Man-Out teachings are about. We'll probably talk more about that when we go back into, into the workshop space. But it's the Man-Out force that is really the common force. We have our Christos self, and then when we go all the way back up, we have the Man-Out force, the Man-Out, the Ire, and the Mane, that are the linking factors. Everything is made out of those forces of consciousness. So we can all begin to understand and begin to feel each other and to feel the environment we live in. We can understand what it feels like to be a sand crystal, to actually make ourselves tiny, tiny, tiny and feel what that sand crystal is feeling. And you can tell the difference in the type of perception. Okay, as a human, I feel things and kind of perceive this way. You'll feel this whole different type of the way consciousness is used in other forms, how the Man-Out and the life force consciousness expresses itself. A tree perceives things very different than a human and very different than a sand, a grain of sand. It's fascinating to begin the process of getting to know your environment again. And as you do, you're getting to know your body as well, because parts of these things live in your body. There are parts of us that our DNA is directly connected to sand and to sea and to sky. If we begin to play with that ability to move our consciousness out of its very tight little focus here, we begin to experience more of really what's going on around us. And the people on Tara, for example, and the people in Inner Earth, what they do when they just say walk across the beach, they have an awareness that in its way is similar to what that bird's consciousness was. They are aware of everything that's going around for blocks. They're not thinking about it. They're just fully, crisply aware. It's part of their now moment awareness. If they want to, they could tune their consciousness and hear any conversation that was going on between any of the kingdoms. They could hear insects talk to each other. They could hear birds talk to trees. They could hear people talk to each other if they wanted to. These things are alive and awake in their consciousness. This is the type of consciousness that we're evolving toward. And it's easy to help ourselves with this if we begin by realizing we can move it out of our head where it's stuck. All right, we get stuck right here. We can try, I think, before we leave, after we do the things that we're going to do first, I think we'll try to get to know something on the beach, and we'll be able to pick something. But we're going to do an exercise. It's not a written one yet, but an exercise in consciousness projection where we begin to, first there's a protocol involved. Again, you don't force your consciousness into anything because that would be a violation. You request it to assist you in experiencing a lesson that you'd like to know. So we'll take it from there, and we'll do that after the other stuff I wanted to talk about originally. Yes?
I communicated with the people. to them and they speak to me.
Yep.
And they'll tell me, like, if there's a feather, they're always giving me feathers.
Right. Yeah, that's excellent. She was saying that she has a telepathic rapport with eagles, and they even like will tell her where feathers are, so she can like collect eagle feathers and those kind of things. This is some of the things you can develop, and it's very, very worth it. This is when you get the Manu forces are becoming alive in your body more and more. It's that force that allows you to translate, where you can speak eagle, or you can speak tree, where you can understand each other through direct cognition. The Manu force in the body is the medium through which that takes place, through which that exchange, where you don't need a language dictionary or like a little translation module in there that'll translate bird into human. You know, it's because we're made of that same consciousness field. There is a place of direct cognition where we simply can telepathically send information into each other. It is wonderful to be able to go out in the world and know you can, even if you never talk to another human being again, realize you never ever have to be lonely. Look at all the life forms here. You can go talk to the bunnies in your garden and actually establish a rapport with them. Well, they'll talk back to you. And if they're feeling you feeling lonely, they'll come back and keep you company because they feel your lonesomeness and they don't want you to feel bad. We're so taught to just have human relationships here and to look at everything else as stuff, as things for our manipulation. You know, most people think of, I mean, in the mainstream, we've been taught to look at animals as food. They're just a thing to serve us. That we have, like, they're not treated like beings. They're not treated like souls. And we feel very isolated. Human beings feel very isolated because of the way they've chosen to act to the environment here. We've had a lot of help getting to those choices that were not good for us. But as we begin to awaken the Manu force within us and we begin to awaken our DNA and begin to heal ourselves, part of this healing is rejoining the community of life. And that means reestablishing our ability to communicate with trees and plants and realize that reverence, remember that was one of the attitudes, the 12 attitudes of mastery, reverent respect. We start to reclaim respect for the other beings on this planet. Those trees are people, all right? Sand grains are people in their own way. They have a different kind of consciousness than a tree does. But when we start to interact with our environment in the way we were intended to, where we respect it as a living kingdom of consciousness, that is there to interact with us. We're not supposed to just use it. It's not just natural resources. We're supposed to, we rape the land. Our cultures rape the land. They take everything they can out of the land. Do they ever ask? No. Do you ever see the geologist sitting there saying, okay, land spirit, can you please tell me where you would like me to dig for oil? Or please tell me where there's a vein of gold that's ready to come out. Then, and show me the best way to help this. No. They go and they use their instruments and they figure out where something is and they rip the land apart and they drag it out. No asking, no respect, no reverence whatsoever. That's why at some point, if this planet starts to rebel, whose fault is it? Is it Mother Earth having a temper tantrum? I think Mother Earth has a lot of patience, personally. I think if I were Mother Earth, I would have had a temper tantrum a long time before. Get off me! So this is part of what we're going to learn. When we work with Vecca codes, the Vecca codes allow us to activate in the body the currents of consciousness that will progressively allow us to develop these relationships with birds and plants and animals, and also with other beings from other places. Because if you can telepath with a bird, let's say, that's sitting in front of you, you can also telepath with a bird that's in the next county. And if you can do that, you can telepath with things that aren't on the planet as well. You can learn to establish relationships with other space-time periods, with beings who have lots of information that's worth listening to, because it can help you in your growth here. And this is what we're moving into. The contact course really begins with the Manu course, of learning about the Manu in yourself and the fact that it's in everything else, and beginning to develop reverent respect, where you start to say, okay, instead of looking at things as its, look at them as whose. Next time you walk on the sand and say, I wonder who I'm walking on. I wonder if they think the same about me. Do you ever think that maybe the sand wonders who those warm feet are that are on top of it? Do you think the sand is aware? It is. It doesn't think about it. I don't think it really cares what your name is. It doesn't need a name. It feels your energy signature. Sand can actually read everything that's going on in your body just by you having your feet on it. It knows more about you right now than you do. What? Most of the time I found no. because that's the form it's chosen, the consciousness that's making up sand, for instance. It used to be rocks and things, and it chose to go through an evolutionary cycle where it would become sand. And it's a much longer, stretched out type of consciousness, where it's experiencing sensation. And it doesn't worry too much about, it doesn't make a value judgment between a good sensation and a bad sensation in the same way. Now, the earth itself does. You know, if something is being done to the earth that's harmful and violates it, it does know the distinction. But the sand is basically, it's hard to hurt sand. You know, it's beyond a space. It's a type of consciousness that doesn't have a highly developed emotional body attached to it. It's made of very simple molecular structure, and that allows it to have a limited range of perception, so it doesn't feel pain in the same way. So it's very allowing. It just sits there, and you can make castles with it, and you can use it in industry and put it through machinery, and you can walk on it, and it doesn't take any of it personally. It's in a state of at-one-ment. It just allows it, and that's okay. You know, so as far as the sand, you know, does it care? It cares that we walk on it. It feels it. It's an interaction. Our walking on sand helps sand feel its aliveness, but it's a different way than we experience that. This is some of the stuff that's worth playing with. If you have questions about, gee, what does sand think? Find out. First you have to realize that it does, or you're going to completely block with that thought pattern any type of impressions you're going to get. If let's say the tree wants to talk to you, but you don't believe trees can talk, the tree can be beaming you with energy, saying, hello, hello, feel me. It'll have to literally reach out and whack you with a branch before you get the idea. And sometimes several times, because the first several times you get whacked with a branch, you'll think it's just the wind. Because you're taught that trees don't think. You're taught that trees just stand there and grow and they do plant stuff, but they don't think. They're not aware of you. They don't talk. And they would never, like a tree would never consciously take a branch and whack you to say, hello, pay attention, I'd like to have a conversation. I found out that trees do that, even when there's no breeze to make the branches move. Plants move on their own, even if there's no breeze, to make them rustle, if they want to. I had a plant that continually grabbed my hair when I did the dishes. It was an ivy plant that hung over, over the sink in the window. And it was all nicely tucked up where, nothing was supposed to be hanging. And I'd notice every morning I'd come out and there'd be a thing hanging. It kept throwing itself off the hook. This one small branch of it would throw itself off the hook. So I'd tuck it back up nice and gentle, start doing the dishes. And the first time I thought there was a bug after me. I thought, because it startled me. And it was caught in my hair. I had long hair at the time. And it had literally, put an end of itself, an ivy end through. And it was tangled in my hair. I was like, oh, geez, how'd that happen? Oh, the thing's fallen down again. I put it back up. And then it happened 3 times within about a 5-minute period. And I really tucked it up good the last time, wound it around. And then I got the feeling something weird is going on here. Is there somebody around here? What do we have, ghosts? Somebody's making the ivy move. And then I heard in my head, why does somebody have to be making me move? Maybe I'm making myself move. And I kind of, uh-oh. Who said that? And this plant started to communicate with me telepathically. And I was amazed because I'd never really thought about it. I'd never thought that you could do this. I never thought plants would want to do this. And I learned the identity that each leaf on that particular branch of ivy had its own identity. They related to each other like siblings, that they were very distinct. Each leaf was a distinct individual unto itself. And it knew itself as that. And the whole plant itself was a family of individuals. And when leaves die, they didn't mourn them because they knew that that consciousness would come back. But they also knew if you would rip a leaf off before its time, it was like murdering one of their family. And they were very offended by it. So all these things you can learn about. What is divine right action here? Let the environment teach you. It will talk to you. If you want to know what the right way to handle plants is, you need to learn to talk to them. And they'll explain to you if you're doing something that's violating their space. You'll also find out that some plants are nice and some aren't. And this is hard. Everybody thinks, oh, the plant kingdom, it's wonderful, it's all perfect, it's a pure kingdom. Nothing on this planet right now is a pure kingdom in the fact that everything has reversals in it. You'll have plants that were actually originally from Nibiru that were transplanted here as part of the takeover force. And when you start to communicate with them, if you're Anunnaki, they'll talk with you and they'll love you to bits. If you have Anunnaki overlays in your gene code, they'll really have a resonance with you. But if you happen to be an indigo and you're getting your fields clear, you'll find that plant that literally doesn't want to talk to you. It won't, if you try to telepath with it, it'll literally be, it'll stonewall you, or you might get nasty telepathy coming back and say, uh-oh, somebody must be trying to mess with me because I'm getting curse words back from the plant, you know what I mean? Plants can actually curse you. And now, they don't talk in English. They send out a vibration, all right? The animal kingdoms will, and the plant kingdoms send out a vibration of intention, of their emotional intention. They are aware of you. And you can say words to a plant. It's not the words themselves that they're translating. It's the vibration underneath them. They speak in direct cognition vibration. When a plant speaks back to you, what's happening is you send out your vibration to it. It gets it. It registers just like language does to us. It uses its language, sends it back in vibration, and our bodies have the mechanism to translate that into the English language flow. The same thing if you start learning to talk with the Iani. They don't speak English. That's not their natural tongue. They speak Anahazi, which is one of the ancient languages that is a huge language, has 144 letters in the alphabet, and imagine all the words and sentences you can come up with that, you know? So when you learn to speak with them, they will speak in your home language. If your home language is Spanish, they'll speak to you in Spanish. They speak in direct cognition, and that's how the communication is taking place, and whatever is necessary, whatever carriers of sound get tacked on, whatever languages, they will come naturally. Your body will translate it for you, because we all have translating mechanisms. It works with the Iani, and it works with the plants, and it works with the animals. Now, we'll talk, before we leave, not here, but tonight, before we leave, I'll be talking a little bit about the crystals as well, the crystal life forms on the planet, and about, you know, crystals that we keep with us, and I'll talk a little bit probably about why we keep the crystals with us, because there's a co-resonance that takes place. And there's stuff happening with the crystals on the planet right now that we can help them, because they're in crisis right now because some of the psychotronics that are being run. So we'll talk about that too, and it'll help us when we get home and we're playing with our crystals. We'll be able to clear them in a way. There's a way to clear crystals that you use the technologies that we're being given now to clear our own atomic structure, that you can begin to clear the atomic structure of crystals. But you can't give a gift that you don't have yet. All right? If you don't have these activations happening in your bodies. Like after about a month of working with the techniques that we're being given with the Manu codes, we will be able to begin hold our crystals and begin to transmit that into them. And that pattern will be strong enough to knock out any negative coding they have in them. So like the Tibetan crystals that have been compromised and those kind of things that they're using right now to try to cause damage to people into the planetary grids, we can clear these programs, but we can't clear them yet. All right, once this stuff is activated, once the Vecca codes, the Manu codes especially, reset the mathematics in our body while we're running those proper mathematics, we can then clear our crystals. We can also learn to transmit larger amounts of that frequency and help to clear the crystal base, literally the crystal matrix that underlies, you know, the planet, so we can help to clear all the crystals on the planet. So we'll get into some